Pretty impressive season opening win for the Ohio State Buckeyes if you look at the scoreboard itself, 52-6. But it took a little while to actually get to that point, and maybe there are things to work on offensively, considering 14 of those 52 points came because of a couple of defensive scores. Nonetheless, a decisive opening season win against the Akron Zips. We'll tell you all about it next on the Buckeye Breakdown postgame show.
We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All-Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown.
Well, hey, everybody, and welcome to the Horseshoe postgame show. It's a Buckeye Breakdown season 2024 week 1 edition, I guess. Ohio State 52, the Akron Zips 6. Brendan Gulick, Anthony Moeglin with you, part of our Ohio State Buckeyes on SI coverage. Glad to see Ohio State back on the field in a competitive setting. Obviously, we're here for the spring game, and that's always fun, but nothing at stake compared to where it was today.
I tell you what. Being in the stadium and seeing it packed, like that was one thing you and I both made comment of like, hey, we're playing Akron. Doesn't really matter. The stadium was packed to the brim, and it was awesome. A beautiful day for football and a beautiful day to start the season. It was great. Everything was back and rolling. It felt like it felt right. Everything felt right.
Well, it was good. I mean, there were 102,000 people here. Obviously yesterday the Archie Griffin statue was finally unveiled. Archie dotted the I today. He was the honorary captain for the coin toss. So there was some nostalgia in the air, some real, Buckeye tradition that actually Will Howard talked about post-game on how it was really cool, that he felt like he had a lot of new things to learn and lean into. And ultimately, part of that Buckeye tradition is winning football. And Ohio State got it done today. Again, on the scoreboard, impressive fashion, 52-6. But there were some moments that I think are critical.
I would say that for sure. And before we get to the football, we both made comment of Will Howard and really like us getting to know him a little bit more, not personally, but hearing him talk kind of every day and seeing him after the game, I thought was really cool. He had a great perspective on, hey, this is all new to me. And it was not a robot. I encourage you to go check it out on our YouTube page, but just, it was a very cool perspective that he had of like, hey, this is new and this is awesome and I love it and it's great. And yes, it's going to become the norm. But for today, this was really freaking cool. And it was cool to just hear that and see him up there with that perspective. And, it makes sense too, because the football on the field, it started a little clunky. It started like him, not necessarily just him, but the whole team, the whole offense in particular, just felt like everyone was jacked up and really excited and just wasn't necessarily all that clean to start. And then as the game kind of fell into place, they started to roll. But for a little bit there, everyone was kind of scratching their head like, uh-oh, do they know that it's week 1? Do they know this is a real game? But they did end up, obviously figuring it out and getting back to normal.
Yeah, how many people thought Akron would score the first points? You never know. Look, the fact, in my opinion, the fact that Donovan Jackson didn't play today at left guard, so you had a new starter there in Austin Siravel. You had Tegra Shabola at right guard. You had a new center in Seth McLaughlin. You can rep it all you want in practice, but game setting is a little bit different. So you got 3 new interior offensive linemen with a quarterback who hasn't played in the shoe, with one of your running backs who hasn't played here yet. Obviously, J.J. Smith put on an incredible performance, and he's kind of the highlight of the day, but it was his first time. He dropped the first ball that got thrown to him. Then he got flagged for an illegal formation, so it was rocky for him too.
2 illegal formations.
Right,
yeah,
that's
tough
true.
Start.
Yeah,
no,
little clunky.
But it is. You can see all the pieces are there, and one of the cool things about this is with the new offensive system with Chip Kelly, it is going to look. We predicted this a little bit. It may look a little tough to start, but there are some things that are really good to lean on. Even Coach Day in his press conference felt that the run game wasn't going. He goes, I came into halftime and I was surprised that, hey, we were running it fine. It just didn't look the part. Like Travion was averaging 6 yards a carry at halftime, and Quinshon was averaging about 4. He's like, oh, it doesn't feel as bad as it actually, or it doesn't feel. It's a little bit better than how it feels, during the game. So this team is so good. That's one of the things we come back to. We're holding them to a high standard, right? We're not holding them to, hey, week 1. We're holding them to, can this team win the national title? They probably couldn't today on August 31st. The good thing is the national title isn't played on August 31st. There's a lot of time to continue to get better.
You don't have to worry about being your best week 1. You try to be the best you can be and keep growing on it, but I don't think anybody expects that you're going to look like a finished product in your first game. Listen, I think there were some moments in the first half that were pretty cool. I loved the way they got J.J. Smith involved in the game early on. Everybody across the country, certainly in Buckeye country, has heard about this kid over and over and over again. The hype train can get going pretty fast down the tracks, and sometimes you need to actually take a deep breath and wait and see things. He definitely has the talent. You could see in one-on-one matchups, he's going to win most of them, and he made a couple of really nice plays. Obviously caught 2 nice touchdowns. Frankly, both of them were also good throws. The deep ball that he got thrown and got tackled just shy of the goal line was another good play. He's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I think maybe everybody in Ohio State fandom right now is saying, listen, this is the guy that we come to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just look to social media just for a little bit. You got Marvin Harrison tweeting about him. You got Chris Carter even made a funny one after he dropped, which we'll show tomorrow on our film breakdown. Yep. He might still be running, because it was set up pretty nicely. But again, this kid's 18. Like when I was 18, I didn't know how to do laundry and all that stuff. This kid's out in front of 102,000 trying to make stuff happen, and he's an absolute freak. Like he's going to be a guy. He was the leading receiver today, had 2 touchdowns, almost like you said, was a yard away from a third, and that's on a very veteran team with a very veteran receiving core that he came in and is very clearly the best in there. So to your point, it was awesome for Buckeye Nation to finally see it. Hey, we've been hearing all this stuff, and you see a clip here and a video here, but they got to watch it for 60 minutes, and he's pretty darn good.
The part of it that, for me, I reckoned back to immediately was Ryan Day's reaction on National Signing Day, where there was that hesitation of why hasn't this come in yet, and he kind of was at the podium and kind of fainted a little bit. Yeah. It's because he can do that, and it's going to be a big deal to have him out there offensively here for the next few years. I really came into this game wanting to see Will Howard take the stage, get his feet underneath him. I didn't expect him to have a perfect game, but I hoped that he would display some leadership traits. Final numbers for Will: 17 of 28 for 228, 3 touchdowns, no picks. I think the low point of the game was on a play in the first half where he scrambled to the right, felt some pressure, threw back to his left to Travion Henderson on what was a backwards pass. Never should have happened. He got a little lucky on that, but for the most part, made good decisions.
Yeah, it's that was one where if a video gamer's out there, you mash all the buttons and the ball's flying everywhere, and it's crazy. That's kind of what it looked like and felt like. But just steady. Again, this is the first time he's had this much expectation on his shoulders, and I think he's towards the end he kind of figured out I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to be precise. I just need to make the right decision. These guys I'm playing with are all unbelievable, and all I have to do is just kind of stay out of the way, distribute the ball, be a good point guard, and the stats will come, and it'll look really, really smooth. And you saw him start to figure that out there towards that, into the second quarter and the back half of the game there.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, I don't expect him to play perfect football even during most of the season. I get the impression that he's going to have a little bit of a leash. I like his maturity. Listening to him speak post-game, struck me with, hey, this is the kind of vibe you want from your guy leading an offense. I mean, he's got it.
Yeah, he gets it. And it means something to him. This was the best part about it. In a world where everyone's transferring and no one really has staying power with their teams, it meant something to him to be Ohio State's quarterback today. And that part was really cool. It wasn't the team up north on the other side of the field. It wasn't a huge rival. It was the Akron Zips, right? And no disrespect to Akron, but this could be easily been a game where he's like, yeah, it's cool, it's fun, whatever. But it truthfully meant something to him to be Ohio State's quarterback today. And I thought that was really cool because that's something that you can build on. And I think he's in for once they figure out the right way to use him and this offense starts to mesh, I think this offense can really explode.
So the other thing that caught my ear post-game from Ryan Day, the comment about, hey, when we put these backup guys in, they're not in to just chew up minutes. They're in there to play. And he specifically referenced, there's going to be metrics that are looked at when you start talking about the college football playoff. And, this is it's week 1 of a brand new era, not just a new year, new season, but the pressure to win every single game at Ohio State exists because the environment is, if you want to be the best, you can't lose, right? But in terms of actually making the playoffs, you can lose a game and maybe even 2 games and still get in. And so the idea that like you have to be perfect, to me, doesn't exist. And I think behind closed doors, the team would also acknowledge that. And yet Ryan is saying, listen, when we have a chance to yank starters off the field, we got to still look like the no doubt about it, this team belongs in as one of the top 12.
I would also add, it was cool to hear him say that all of the points and the, making sure your defense is having good stats and all those things, all of that does matter, because if you do get into a situation where you do stumble late in the year, maybe once, maybe twice, they're going to look at games like this. Maybe not exactly this one today, but as those mid-tier games, how did you perform? Did you squeak out a win against Akron?
Did you beat up the teams you were supposed to beat up?
Correct. And it was cool to hear him say that today. Like, it's August 31st, right? The playoff isn't going to come till December, but it's on their minds. It's very clearly on their minds. You didn't stumble or accidentally get to it. It's something they're actively thinking about and they're coaching towards and playing towards. So it's cool. That's a really cool factor of this season that's brand new to everybody. And you see, Ohio State's approach to it.
How'd you think of the balance rushing attack here? Travion Henderson, 8 carries, 65 yards, no scores, but he averaged 8.1 per carry, long of 21. Quinshon Judkins, 13 carries for 55 yards and a touchdown. He averaged 4.2, and Travion also had 2 catches for 18 yards out of that.
Yeah, I think 33 carries is something that we should be get accustomed to seeing more rushes than pass attempts. I think that, when you think about Chip Kelly, and we've all fell into this trap, you think of home run plays, tons of points, but this guy loves to run the football. And Ryan Day even said this today. He's like, yeah, we're going to establish the run, not because we want to run it down Akron's throat, but he's like, when it gets late in the season and we get into some dogfights, we're going to have to run the football, especially playing in the wintertime here, maybe a home playoff game in the snow.
The last three rivalry games, a team that's run the ball better, and usually that is the case. But Michigan won that game because they ran it repeatedly and effectively.
Absolutely. And imagine a playoff game in the snow here where it's windy and cold and whatnot. You're going to have to run the football. So there's going to be an obvious commitment to the run game. I think there's a lot of room to continue to work in the run game. I thought from the offensive line's perspective, just from watching it one time live and maybe a couple replays here and there, thought there were some mistakes. Once in a while, I'm excited to really dig into it a little bit deeper. But also, too, finding the balance between Quinshon and Travion. Those are 2 number 1 backs. Those would be 2 number 1 back on every single team in the country. They play together. How do you balance that out? And I think that they're still going to work through that and figure it out and come to a point where they are getting it, to a point where it is nice and balanced. But that'll come with time. And these coaches and this play calling has to learn the players as well. I think that's going to continue to improve.
Some of the other numbers that I think stand out in general, pretty efficient on third down, 9 of 14, and defensively, Akron was 4 of 16 on third downs. So those are solid numbers. Buckeyes averaged just over 6 yards per play. That shows both some sustained success and some over-the-top home run type hitter power. That's pretty good. Averaging as a team more than 5 yards per rush, pretty solid. 24 first downs, and to your point, 33 carries, 31 pass attempts, so good balance there. 404 yards of total offense. The third quarter, offensively didn't run as many plays, but had some big scores. So before we talk defense, maybe just offensively as a whole, early in the year, you're trying to find your identity. By the way, in addition to all the new players, I know we've alluded to it, but you got a new offensive coordinator. So there's a lot of this like, hey, what's our identity? What do we want to be? Who are we? What's working? What's not? Like trying to figure that all out.
And there was a couple questionable plays, in my opinion, not just what are you trying to do kind of a thought. Not, hey, this is a bad idea, but like, what's the goal?
Yeah.
And you got to remember that part of it too. Like this is a little bit of an experiment in and of itself. Hey, this maybe this package or this scheme doesn't work. Let's take it out. Maybe we thought we had something here in it. Maybe we're not as good blocking on the perimeter right now. That's something to work on. So there's some things that I think that they can continue to improve on. It was a tough start. It was a clunky and slow start. But what you're really encouraged by is when that team started rolling, when the freight train started going, it's going to be really hard to stop them. And you can see them kind of get a little bit of rhythm. And when that happened, they really took off. So start a little bit faster and continue to kind of sustain that.
In terms of Ohio State's offensive drives in the game, obviously started with a 3-and-out touchdown on the next drive. They turned it over on downs the following drive. Back-to-back drives, they scored field goal touchdown, eventually punted on their 3-and-out the following drive. And then they were productive, 3 straight touchdown scoring drives And at that point, it got into the middle of the fourth quarter, and you weren't really as concerned as you moved along. So, all in all, I thought offensively, fine, not great, certainly not terrible. Some of the stuff, I think it's just so new. It's the helmet communication is new. Ryan Day and company having iPads on the sideline and watching stuff in real time. Like, you should think that this would make for adjustments quicker, but sometimes, too much at once, all new. It's you can't replicate game speed. It takes a little while to get all that going.
And how many times do we see Will Howard in the huddle, doing one of these? I can't hear, and Ryan Day is on the numbers screaming the play, and you're looking at the play clock and you're like, okay, it's going to take some time to kind of clean all that stuff up. But hey, that's growing pains. A totally new system.
Yeah. And the good news is you start the season with a few of these games because you're supposed to beat up on Akron and Western Michigan and hopefully Marshall. And so, you get a month's worth of reps.
It's two different philosophies because we saw all around the country today. You got Georgia and Clemson, you got Miami and Florida, you got Notre Dame and Texas A&M playing right now. Those are big marquee matchups. That's certainly one way to do it. This is also one way to do it. Figure it out. I mean, no way's right, no way's wrong, but this is just the way.
Well, and look, Ohio State opened with Notre Dame here a couple of years ago, right? So, it's not like they haven't had those big openers as well, but there is more pressure in a situation where you have to have that. Okay, defensively, maybe the biggest thing coming into the game, the fact that Cody Simon was not starting. And so that forced Sonny Styles not just to go from safety to linebacker as he'd been training, but to change linebacker positions today. And I thought he played really, really well. Liked what I saw from C.J. Hicks, just quick glance, again, not looking at tape yet. I even thought Arvell Reese played fairly well when he got in there late. I thought the defensive line did what they were supposed to do. They really, Akron had -2 rushing yards in the first half. They pretty much smothered some of that stuff. But I also thought Joe Moorhead called a really good game and had Akron well prepared because they got the ball out quick. They got it to the boundary, and they looked like they had a pretty good game plan.
And they truthfully kind of identified some spaces and exploited some things that I think that Ohio State fans had noticed, like attacking the flats and really blocking on the perimeter. Akron did a very good job in some of those areas, and they were able to get some nice yardages. Now, there was 2 drives that ended on 4th down, so the Akron did move the ball a little bit, enough for even Denzel Burke in his post-game presser was like, it was frustrating. He was very visibly frustrated, and someone asked him, you guys expected to come out and dominate. Is it frustrating that you really didn't? He goes, yeah, it is. We hold ourselves to a really high standard. With that said, you gave 177 yards and 6 points. It's pretty darn good.
It's not bad.
It's pretty darn good. And you had two turnovers that ended in touchdowns.
And by the way, on 64 plays. So we're talking about 2.8 yards per play. That's a good winning metric.
Really, really, really good. And one of the things that is going to be really fun for Ohio State fans, and I encourage, if you got 20 minutes, go back and watch this game and just follow number 2. Just wherever Caleb Downs is.
Literally, that was the next question I was going to ask you is hey, first impressions, Caleb Downs looked like he was everywhere.
It's this secondary. First of all, it starts with Caleb Downs, and I want to go back and listen. Denzel made a comment. It's he's our defensive coordinator on the field, and it was something that I want to listen back to. Be he's got a lot of responsibility, but watch this secondary and specifically the safeties. Right, it's Caleb Downs, Lathan Ransom, Jordan Hancock. They all were kind of on the field all at once, and it made for matchup problems because Caleb Downs, a handful of plays, was on the line of scrimmage, and he was back up playing linebacker. They were going in this rotation where, okay, Caleb Downs is now in the deep post. He's in the deep middle. He's on the deep half. But the play before, he was blitzing from the linebacker position, and the other 2 were in the back. So that gives you such an advantage because when teams, and maybe not necessarily Akron, and maybe this does change when personnel does increase on the other side, but when teams try to scheme you up to bring a couple more tight ends in or bring more receivers in, if Ohio State can stay in what they determine is base with 3 safeties and 2 corners, and they can defend the run and play tough, there's nothing you can do because you don't have to sub linebackers out. They can't get advantages with their receivers and slots and stuff. And we'll dive into it a little bit more, but those 3 in the back end was something that really caught my attention, the way that they were able to play together and cause havoc for the offense.
Jim Knowles talks all the time. We are a safety-driven defense, and it was you watch today's game and you go, "Yeah, that's what this is supposed to look like." Was it perfect? No. I mean, talk about clunkiness. The first drive of the game, Davison Igbinosun almost got ejected for a targeting foul. Fortunately, it wasn't a targeting foul. They're both sides of the ball, maybe just not quite super sharp out of the gate. You can't make those mistakes, but luckily you got away with it there.
Yeah, and maybe it's everyone's jacked up, right? We talk expectations. You and I talk about it. Guess what? They hear it, right? Yeah. And they know this roster is unbelievable. They know they want to go out and dominate. It's hard to do that sometimes, but. One guy who I've continued to say is Denzel Burke's, I think, my favorite player on the defense. He's the leader of that defense. The play he made, he just took the ball away from the receiver, just like he caught it. We've maybe have seen once before, but just took it away, turnover. And somebody asked him about it, and he was like, "It's just instinct. Like you can't really practice that kind of stuff." He goes, "I saw the ball. I meant to make the tackle. The ball was in my chest. I ripped it out.
Yeah.
That was it." And he's just a guy that you build teams around, you build defenses around, and he's so fun and he's so darn good. This whole defense is just unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, you wish him good health because it could be a really fun year in that regard. And I thought Ohio State did a nice job against the rush. Obviously, if you come up with 5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss, that's going to certainly help your overall rush totals. But Akron 35 carries for 47 total yards, 1.3 yards per carry. Their longest run of the day was 12. And one run that was double-digit yardage. You make teams one-dimensional that way.
Yeah.
And they don't really have an over-the-top, hit-you-deep kind of threat. Right. But I also thought they didn't really try to take too many of those deep shots. They threw a few intermediary routes, but it felt to me more like Akron's game plan, which I kind of liked, to be honest with you, was get it out in the flat, control the clock, try to stretch the field horizontally a little bit, and then pick your spots.
Pick your spots, and that aligns exactly with what the guys were saying too, with the way that this Ohio State defensive line is, how dominant and explosive they are. Yeah. We saw a handful of plays where Jack Sawyer planted the quarterback into the ground, maybe broke a couple ribs. The kid didn't finish the game. You felt your heart broke for him.
Jack's spin move on the right tackle.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the tackle whiffed when he turned inside. I was like, oh boy.
Yeah. I haven't been there often, but when a defensive end has a free runner at you and you're like, my guys are running deep and I can't throw it for another 2 seconds. And then you do throw it and you just take one right to the ribs. Yeah, that's one where you're like, I can't breathe right now. I don't know what's going on. No, but the defensive line unlocks everything, right? If you, like we talked about it the other day on our pregame show, they can't block up front. Guess what? If I'm Davison Igbinosun, I'm scooting up. Denzel Burke, I'm scooting up. Oh, you guys you can't drop back. Let's go. Now you're going to throw another flat. I'm going to go pick it off. So it just unlocks everything. And those guys are so dominant.
3 takeaways today. 2 of them go for touchdowns. Obviously, that's as a defense, it's what you're trying to hang your hat on, right? You want to score defensive touchdowns. Last year was not a takeaway heavy year. It was not a sack heavy year. Ohio State is not, as a team, has not led the Big Ten in sacks since 2019, and considering, the prolific nature of some of the guys that have been on this defensive line the last few years, that's been a little bit of a frustrating spot. I'm not going to sit here and get all jazzed up about 5 sacks and 10 TFLs against Akron. That's not the goal, but it's a good start. And the fact that this secondary is as good as they are already, sometimes you see the secondary benefit from a really good pass rush. I almost wonder if that can work in reverse here, because the secondary, look, they're not perfect, but if this group plays really, really well and makes the quarterback hold for that extra beat, that may cause a little bit more consternation as the year goes along.
Absolutely. And like we talked about too, who do you double team on that front? Anywhere you double team, you're leaving 3 one-on-ones that it's advantage Ohio State across the board. So that I'm excited to see how this group continues to get better. It's veteran. This whole defense is veteran. They've been here. They've had massive kickoff days at the shoe where it's exciting, and they've done this before. They've battled. They've gone to war together, and it's going to be exciting to see how they continue to grow and get better.
Got one comment here. The O-line struggled the first half, but got better second half. Something special about Peoples. I love that for sure. I love watching that kid get carries.
Yeah.
Frankly, I thought Dallin Hayden got better run at Ohio State than he got at Colorado, but what the heck, and it's given James Peoples a chance to scoot up on the depth chart, and he's playing well.
Yeah, and Coach Day even alluded to that exact point of that, hey, the offensive line did seem to struggle in the first half, and it didn't feel right, and they were a little excited, and the guys got maybe a little too jacked up, and then they kind of relaxed. And in the second half, they stuck to their jobs. They started to get some momentum and roll, and it turned out pretty well.
All right, 52-6, a good start. Any final thoughts?
Solid start. Continue to get better. One of the things every coach will always say: the jump you make from week 1 to week 2 is probably the biggest jump you'll make all year. There's a lot of stuff that is correctable, a lot of stuff they can get better at. Get back to work this week. Again, it's a faceless opponent next week. Just continue to work on yourself, get better, and keep improving from there.
You know, I have to admit, I really like the way the schedule lines up this year, because you get the opportunity to do that from week 1 to week 2, and then you can get healthy, right? Because sometimes you can have some of those injuries beginning of the year that can be a little frustrating. You know, you hope you train the right way all off season, that you don't have a bunch of soft tissue injuries. And the good news is, you know, in the grand scheme of things, Ohio State is pretty healthy right now. It doesn't always happen that way to start the season, but you love it when it does. And then after the bye week, you're going to go play another team that you should beat without any, you know, real challenge before you get into Big Ten play. And you don't have to start with a juggernaut in the Big Ten. You got 4 games, and I'm not disrespecting Michigan State, but you got 4 games in 5 weeks out of the gate that you should be 4-0 before you play an Iowa team who, let's give Iowa credit,
Scored touchdowns
scored
today.
Some touchdowns today. They had
not field goals, not punts, touchdowns.
I think they had 3 wide receiver touchdowns today after 2 all year last year and 2 all year the year before. Maybe Iowa's a little better.
So let's take just a quick spin around the Big Ten. Nebraska looked like a different team today. Dylan Raiola has them rolling.
Yep.
Michigan's playing right now. Iowa put up 30. Again, everyone's kind of playing their kind of warm-up games. Michigan State, on the other hand, didn't look all that well last night against FAU. But you look around the Big Ten, it seems like, you know, as the saying goes, a rising tide lifts all boats. It seems like some of those other teams are starting to get better, and there's going to be a lot that you can't overlook.
How about Happy Valley?
Drew Aller. I mean, a lot of people wrote him off last year, and I'm biased. I'm a Cleveland guy myself. I watched him in high school. I think he's awesome, and was hoping he'd come to Ohio State. But hey, that could be a guy who's a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, well, that's thankfully that game is not early in the season.
Yeah, right. It's not next week.
The good news is things are kind of lining up right now for Ohio State the way that you would hope. You got to keep taking care of business, and you play the schedule you got. And the good news is for the Buckeyes in week 1 today, they certainly did that. A decisive win. Again, took a little while to get there, aided by a couple of defensive touchdowns. You love to see that as well. Not a 500-yard offensive, holy smokes, this team looks amazing kind of day. But a really good start to the season. And I think it's the kind of note that you want to start when you have these expectations. If you go out and pitch a perfect game early on, maybe you feel a little too high on the horse. I think they feel really good about what they did, but know that, man, our best has to be yet to come.
Tell you what, the coaches are happy that this didn't go smooth. There's a lot to coach on. Tomorrow's film sessions, maybe there's going to be a lot of truth to be told in tomorrow's film session. But like we said, it's not about right now. It's continue to get better and ascend throughout the year.
Can't wait to follow it along the way. si.com/college/Ohio State, your home for all Ohio State content, and certainly right here on this YouTube channel as well. So we'll continue to follow the Buckeyes after a big week 1 win, 52-6 over the Akron Zips.